Global, I'd like to thank you all for coming today to the Historical Society. This is probably the biggest crowd we've ever had. I just told Carolyn she's going to be signing autographs afterwards. She already had a phone call before she got here. So apparently it was a good choice of program. Next week we've got Jim Pantis coming, and he's going to talk about Cortland music scene in the 50s and 60s. Ronnie James Dio before he became Dio. Should be interesting. There are a few things that I just want to mention before we get started. And we do have a summer book sale and t-shirt sale. T-shirts are over on the, I mean, it's very crowded in here, but t-shirts are over on the windowsill. They're $5 each. We've got all kinds of books, 50% off the regular price, so summer's a good time to catch up on your reading, especially if it's local history and you've never read it before. We've got some great stories. Also, we do have our Attic Treasures sale still set up in the basement. If you're interested in old stuff, we've got a lot of stuff down there. Desserts and beverages, if you haven't already gotten anything, there is water in the cooler, or there was. We have more down the hallway if we need to get some. I think they're making more coffee. There's all kinds of desserts over there. And also, if you haven't been here before and you haven't done so, there's a sign-in sheet right by the clock, right where Ann is holding her hand up. If you could just sign that on the way out, because we keep track of how many people attend, that would be excellent. One other thing is a survey on your table. It helps us to find new speakers, new topics that people are interested in. So if you think of any topic that interests you, or if you want to be on our e-newsletter mailing list, sign up for that. That's great. Anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Carolyn. Thank you for filling the room, Carolyn. We're very happy to have you here today.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. I'm surprised at how many people showed up. I don't know that the story of Burgess Clothing is all that new, but maybe I can add one or two new things today. The part that I'm going to read was part of a paper I did for Ladies Literary Club 2 years ago, I think it was, when the theme was the decade of the 1880s, and because the store was started in 1884, that's why I chose that topic. 117 years before airplanes slammed into the Twin Towers, on September 11, 1884, Archie Burgess and his cousin Belle Bingham opened a men's clothing store on Main Street, Cortland. It was a gutsy move for this 21-year-old who had little formal education, but knew he wasn't cut out for farming and wanted to do something different with his life. The 1850 and 1855 census records show a number of Burgess families in Marathon, but they were not directly related to Archie's grandfather, Seth, who bought 82 acres in the town of Solon in 1858. Seth was an early abolitionist and an itinerant minister coming to Cortland County from Wilkes-Barre, PA. He and his wife Polly had 3 sons and a daughter, the second son, Gershom, becoming Archie's father. After selling the Solon farm to Gershom, Seth later bought a farm in Cortlandville. He and his wife Polly and their youngest son Frank, who died in his late teens, are all buried in the Blodgett Mills Cemetery. Gershom remained on his father's farm for over 30 years. He then purchased a farm in Blodgett Mills and established a dairy, which he operated for another 25 years. In 1862, he married Villa Peck, the daughter of a neighboring Solon farmer. Villa had been educated at the McGrawville Academy and was interested in medicine and herbs. She was probably the local midwife. She and Gershom had 3 children, Archie being the oldest, and Harris 12 years his junior, with a sister in between. While still in his teens, Archie taught for a term in a one-room schoolhouse, receiving $50 for his work. At the age of 18, he went to work for his uncle, who owned the W.S. Peck Company in Syracuse, a business that manufactured and wholesaled men's clothing. It is possible that his cousin and original business partner was related through his mother. Dell Bingham may also have worked at the clothing factory, although that is not known for certain. The original store, Burgess and Bingham, was located a few doors north of the Main Street Central Avenue corner, where the surviving company did business for over 90 years. There was no need for another men's store in 1884, as several were thriving on Main Street. Archie invested $500 capital in the business, the $50 he had saved from teaching, his wages from the factory, and a small loan from his uncle. We still have the original ledger he kept, and his beautiful penmanship shows the store was profitable from the beginning. The cousins' partnership lasted about 10 years, and for unknown reasons, in 1893, Dell left, taking with him the best salesman and opening another store on Main Street. Archie continued to operate the business as A.S. Burgess until 1915. Archie attributed his success in dealing with competition in the early years to 4 principles of business practice: selling items at or nearly cost, being open 6 days a week from 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. Extensive advertising. He definitely believed in keeping the name of the store in front of the public, and participating with displays at all the county fairs in the trading area. And somewhere in these pictures, there's a picture taken at the Dryden Fair at quite an early year. In the bitter cold early morning hours of February 5th, 1915, a musician returning home from playing at a dance noticed smoke coming from the 3rd floor of the building adjacent to the Burgess store. In those days before building codes, the blocks had been constructed as one building with no common wall in between them. I don't know if things have changed, but to the day the family sold the building, that situation hasn't changed. Fire insurance was always high, especially when the home dairy occupied the other building. The young musician ran across Main Street and sounded the alarm at the old fire station, then ran to the new fire station on Port Street and rang the alarm there. The Cortland Democrat reported, the alarm system at the new fire station worked poorly, and firemen were slow at responding to the alarm. Successive alarms finally brought the firemen to the scene. The musician and a police officer entered the building and claimed the fire had started in an unoccupied room on the 3rd floor of the adjoining Collins block, but they were driven back by rapidly spreading flames. The two were reported by the Democrat as stating the fire could have been extinguished at the time if a good stream of water had been available. However, the Cortland Standard countered that report. This morning's fire was the first severe tryout of the new water main and the new 4-way hydrant. They stood the test because of the many streams of water applied. So it's hard to tell at this point who was right. Extension ladders were raised with difficulty because the water being poured on the fire froze and made the ladders both heavy and slippery. The fire department had been wanting a new truck with lighter, more serviceable ladders, and they now had a good reason to back them up. 2 firemen were injured, one slipping on the icy inside staircase, the other slipped on an icy ladder rung. Many were overcome by the dense smoke. Archie's younger brother, Harris, had started working at the store when he was 14, and at the time of the fire, he was 26. Archie was vacationing in Florida at that time, so Harris was in charge. When called to the scene, the fire was at the rear of the building, and the standard reports that he entered the front and supplied the firemen with warm woolen gloves. Damage to inventory was extensive due to the water. The roof and the 4th floor collapsed. Family stories say that when Archie was finally located and told of the fire, he was pragmatic. "I can't do anything from here," he told Harris. "Handle it." And Harris did just that. He organized the biggest fire sale the city had ever seen. 25 clerks were hired to handle the crowds. Shoppers were let into the store a few at a time, coming in the front and exiting the back. All packages were wrapped with paper and string. Newly arrived immigrants would buy a trunk and fill it with clothing to be sent back to family. Upon return from Florida, Archie was so pleased with his brother's work, he made him a full partner, and the business thereafter was known as Burgess Clothing Company. And I just want to note too that for at least since the time of the fire and probably before, there was a barber shop above the store on the 2nd floor, because in pictures we have of the fire, there's a sign up there that says barber shop. And also I have seen some pictures of ads about the fire sale, and the barber shop was advertising haircuts at 10 cents. Repairs were begun immediately, and by April 1st, the interior was ready for business. Floor space was doubled by opening the basement. The latest of fixtures were installed, and lighting was brought up to date. At various times, branches of the store were located in Marathon, Norwich, Homer, and Moravia. And there are a couple pictures here of some of those other stores. Archie and Harris complemented each other as partners. Archie was the entrepreneur, forward-thinking, wanting the best of everything, willing to take risks. Harris was more reserved, attending to detail, and a superb salesman. The two built a business which at one time was the largest clothing store in a multi-county area. Archie and Harris both suffered personal tragedy in their private lives. Archie and his wife Minnie had a son, Archie Jr., who only lived 10 days. They had no other children. Harris married Bertha Powers, and they had 2 children, Harold and Alice. When the children were very young, Bertha contracted tuberculosis and went to Colorado hoping for a cure. It was not to be, and she returned to Cortland and passed away when the children were 7 and 4. Harris later married May Morgan, and they had a son who died shortly after birth. Harris and May lived to celebrate more than 50 years of marriage. Archie died suddenly in 1932 while visiting a farm he owned in Truxton. Harris was active in the business until 1988, passing away 3 years later at age 91. And Archie was more of a philanthropist. He was outgoing, and in his will, which came to light after his death, he gave generous sums to a number of institutions around Cortland, the library, the hospital, the Presbyterian Church. Harris was...
YMCA.
Pardon?
The YMCA.
The YMCA. And Harris was more quiet, but he was known for helping individuals during his lifetime, giving loans to start small businesses and helping people in that way. The barn signs advertising the store were Archie's idea. Competition was keen, and the business name needed to be seen often by potential customers. For many years after the store's beginning, wooden crates were used to ship in the merchandise. Instead of throwing away the empty boxes, Archie used the wooden slats to make advertising signs. They were painted yellow with black letters and attached to barns, trees, fences, and chicken coops. The farmers were given small souvenirs in appreciation for using their space. Burgess Clothing signs were also painted directly on the sides of barns or small businesses, where the owners were anxious to have one side of the building painted for free. These large signs were preferred, as in the horse and buggy days, traffic moved slowly, and the sign was in front of the viewer for a long time. Advertising continued this way until about 1970, when the state and local laws were passed, which prohibited signs close to the roads. Also, barns were beginning to disappear from the countryside. At one time, over 400 signs could be seen around several central New York counties. Locals who had been traveling often said they knew they were nearly home when they saw a Burgess Clothing sign. The signs have also become a symbol of home for some former residents who have moved away. We know of at least one in Montana, Alabama, California, and Florida. And I know there are going to be 2 in South Carolina, because our grandson is going to take one for his house, and our granddaughter is going to take another for hers. In the early 1930s, an unusual event occurred. I wanted to say something else before I got off the topic of the fire and the barn signs. When I was doing research to write this paper, I was down at the Historical Society looking through old newspapers for 1914, looking to see the write-up of the fire. And I just could not find anything. And so finally, I think Mindy and Tabitha got involved and kept looking. And for sure, the fire was in 1915. Now, if you look at some of these pictures, there's a picture here of the building right after the fire. And everything in family records is marked 1914. But I think it really did happen in 1915. In the early 1930s, an unusual event occurred related to the building, although not the business. The building was heated during cold weather with radiators in each of the occupied rooms. These radiators were shut off at night by hand and had to be turned on again in the same way in the morning. As a young man, this was Harold Burgess's job. Early one morning, he was in the office of a lawyer, renting a space on an upper floor. and as he was standing up from restarting the heat, his eye scanned a table in the center of the room. Newspapers, raised by a stack of law books, covered the entire table. On the tabletop, underneath the papers, were what appeared to be paper currency. Looking closely at one of the bills, Harold recognized it as counterfeit. He told his father, who called the sheriff. The sheriff hid in a neighboring office for hours before a young man finally showed up and was arrested. The man's story: he and another young man had been placed in the custody of the lawyer upon their release from Auburn Penitentiary. One of the men had purchased a roll of counterfeit bills in New York City, and in the lawyer's absence, they were aging them in coffee water and had laid them out to dry overnight, not realizing that someone would be in the office in the early morning hours. At a trial held in federal court in Syracuse, the point was raised about the legality of the sheriff entering the lawyer's office without a warrant. It turned out that Harold had the legal right to enter the private office because of the heating operation. The counterfeiters were convicted and sentenced to 2-year prison terms each, and the lawyer was reprimanded for his lax supervision of the parolees. An event associated with Burgess Clothing Company was the annual George Washington's birthday sale. Selected items were marked down from a few cents to a few dollars and listed specifically in a large ad in the Cortland Standard. A crowd of customers would gather in front of the store before the store opened, many with the ad in hand. When the doors opened, shoppers ran in all directions to grab the bargains. Within an hour, the excitement was over and the sale items were usually gone. It was a fun event for both staff and shoppers, and we don't remember any disagreements between those who might have wanted the same items. And I'm sure some of you probably remember 2 of our long-term memorable employees, Bill Russell and Lenora Grant. Bill was a large man who wore his clothes very, very well. And Bill was known for his, in spite of his size, his agility, because if a customer came in and said, "I want that tie in the window," Bill could go into that window and get the item and get back out without disturbing anything. And he was the only salesman who could do that. And Lenora Grant, Seth thinks she probably worked for the store for about 60 years. And she was a feisty little lady who was an excellent bookkeeper. But she could be known when she was busy ringing up sales and the telephone rang. She would say, "What do you want?" Not exactly the way to answer the phone professionally. Just a couple other little items. In addition to the barn signs, there were a lot of small items given out. I know we have a tin cup that when you were drinking out of it and drained it, it said Burgess Clothing on the bottom. And thermometers. We have 2. One is on a wooden background and the other one is a metal one. The wooden one is now at our house in Florida, and the metal one is still on the house on Groton Avenue. And something else that probably a lot of people would not be aware, when Jim Yeaman's father first came to Cortland, he would buy overalls and
He worked with farmers clothing.
Clothing,
gloves
yeah.
and stuff like that.
yes, he would buy them at just a hair above cost from the store and peddle them to farmers out in the countryside. So I've kept this to mostly the very early years of the store. If anybody has any questions or comments or anything they'd like to share, yes.
Carolyn, my late husband was a longtime employee, started out as in school, he was in school, Dave Vasberg.
Yeah.
And so I got to know quite a bit about your family, and Lenny, as we called her, the bookkeeper, Bill Russell, of course, and I felt, when I went in that store, I just felt like I was going into a relative's home. They were so friendly and accommodating, and a lot of good memories from Burgess.
Thank you. And because there's a picture here of some of those longtime employees. I don't know where it is now. Here it is. That was Miss Grant, and that was Randy Muncie, Harold Burgess, Miss Grant, Harris Burgess, Bill Russell, Ed, Brayton Leroy, Uncle Hinch, as we call him, Henry Hinchcliffe, Ken Lott, what's his name, Walt Smith, yes, Pete Hinchcliffe, and 2 traveling salesmen. It's all on the back.
Archie and Harris were the original, kept the original, and then Harold was a son of
Harris,
Harris.
right.
And what was the next generation?
The next generation was Ed Burgess, and my husband Seth.
Seth was there?
Yeah.
And
And Pete
yeah.
Hinchcliffe,
Yeah.
yes, Pete Hinchcliffe. Ann's husband.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I
I thought he was in the insurance business.
No,
The Ann's
Looks
brother-in-law.
My father-in-law,
father-in-law.
Henry Hinchcliffe,
But-
and then my brother-in-law, Dave's, my husband's brother, Pete Hinchcliffe, was in the store in Cortland, but my husband never worked for the store. Well, he did when he was a little boy.
Yeah,
He would help out at Christmas time, but
all the
also,
family did.
Seth, didn't you and Dave paint the Burgess Clothing signs in the
Yes, we did.
summertime?
Yeah, we used to paint the signs, and I used to put them up on barns and like that. We'd go out, usually with my Uncle Hitch, drive us out during the summer, and we'd check signs. If they were getting kind of weather beaten, we'd take the old sign down and put a new sign up and give the farmer a few bucks, and then bring the sign back and repaint it, and then the same. We take out about 8 signs every week and bring them back and repaint them.
And these signs have held up all this time and are being...
There's some that are, yes. I don't know if they still have it, but we gave one to the Historical Society, which is a smaller sign. Oh, maybe this big. More, the ones that I painted were about that size. And,
Well, that's good paint.
yeah.
I have questions. You said the signs initially were yellow. When did they go to black and white?
I think the the small signs were painted with yellow letters, I think, weren't they?
No, I think they were black letters. The ones I saw,
I think,
my brother picked up one of those slats from a
packing crate.
packing crate, and I used to put it on fence posts. And the one I saw was black with white writing, and I might say overalls 50 cents or whatever did on it. I only saw one of those, so I wasn't there for the opening of the store.
One other question. Somebody, when I was downtown, when I was still in Cortland and young, and going in Burgess Clothing and talking to people, he hired students?
Oh, yeah,
Students,
high school students.
high school,
Yeah.
not college students, high school.
More high school students.
High school students do.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's.
They
when
were
I was-
assigned what week and what part of the county they went to. You're going to Truxton, there's 3 of you. It would take you 2 days to do those, and then you're going to Solon, and then you're going to Scott, and then you're going to Preble.
You know,
Yes.
Because they had 400 signs they had to divvy up for
Well,
the summer, how many
yes.
boys they had and where they went to do them. It's in the book.
Yeah.
Page 68, the signs.
Yes.
Were each one of the signs numbered so they knew when they took them down and painted them
No.
where they went?
No,
No.
The stores knew where they were.
we just
they
drove
painted
down the
them on
road and when we
premises.
saw a sign, we look it over, if it was in good shape, we move on. And we did not keep track of who had the sign or anything like that, except we had a few reflector signs that had glass reflectors in them. And those we paid for yearly. And the only one I can remember off the top of my head, there was one on Groton Road out here.
Route 11,
And there might have been,
as you went around the bend between Little York and Baltimore.
yeah. And those I used to pay every year, and those, if we had to repaint them, we had to do one on the barn because they were bolted onto the barn. The other
Mine
ones-
I bought on Cosmo Hill, Doug Moorfield, and
Yeah,
I believe it was maybe at your house. Big house with your car garage,
It
was
was,
his list.
yeah, I think we sold it. My girls were just asking me, what happened to our sign? I said, when we moved to North Carolina, we didn't have any place for it. And we sold it.
I have it.
Gotta go home.
I remember Mr. Hinchcliffe, he had a saying that he repeated quite a bit, because Dave used to come home and repeat it, and it was, "Holy Toledo." Was that, do you remember that at all? Holy
yeah,
Toledo.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard for me to remember all that happened, but yeah, I could see him saying that.
Yeah.
That's real cussing.
When did the store close?
1981.
81.
81.
My great uncle died in 1932, and I was born in 1934, and probably was a blessing because I'm the one that closed down the store, and he would have not been happy, you know.
Were you on Main Street when you closed, or had you gone to the mall?
We were closing, the store downtown closed before the one out in the mall by about 2 years. But the final store was closed in 1981.
You're still taking returns?
No, we're not taking returns anymore. Unless you have the sales slip.
Yes.
Where exactly on Main Street was it?
It was at the corner of Main Street and Central Avenue. It's,
Where a bookstore-
there's a bagel shop in
Oh,
there.
the bagel shop now.
And then on the Central
I haven't been
Avenue
down
side,
to it for so long.
Burgess name is
That's what I knew it was a
still
bookstore.
very prominent on the side of the building.
You got your deliveries through the front sidewalk.
Yes.
Yes, it's one of the few stores, I think, on Main Street that their basement went underneath the sidewalk.
It attracted over there. Melders had one, of course.
It's that glass bricks
The
on
sidewalk
top.
was
Yeah.
glass bricks.
Yeah.
So
I remember
it
this.
let light down into
Yeah. We had to patch them every once in a while because glass bricks would hold
And,
water or snow.
Carolyn?
Yeah.
I remember when the Burgess family sent my husband to New York to study window display.
Okay.
And, yeah, and he took all kinds of notes, and he came home with a picture of what he had displayed in Lord and Taylor. And he was gone so late that when he came home that night and was trying to get in the house, I couldn't hear him. So he was out there knocking on the door for I don't know how long, but he had a good education there in window decorating.
Yeah, I brought a picture here. It just fascinated me a little bit. It's June 1st, 1952, a window display of hats. Just how times have changed. How many hats were available for sale? And there is a picture here of, this is 1924, Archie is in that picture, so he was still alive at that point. There's a picture of the fire, which says 1914. So that's how, I don't know where that mix-up started. And what else? There was a picture of a balloon drop. I think sales discounts were inside the balloons, dropped from the top of the, or an upper floor anyway, and people on Central Avenue chasing the balloons. This one has, this is a little picture of the Moravia store, and this is the Marathon store. And this...
We have one on homeless too.
Yeah, I think, yeah, someplace here, there's a picture
I've
of
seen
the
a picture of
homeless
that one,
store.
however.
And this picture, which is partially covered up now, but it's, I think it was 1901, it said, at the Dryden Fair. And there's a man dressed up advertising Burgess Clothing.
Another advertising they had, because we bought one, I don't know, about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
There was a huge umbrella they used to give to farmers to put on their hay wagon, so when they were picking up hay and the like, they'd have some shade. And we picked that from somebody out on Route 222.
Yeah.
But it was too big to, and we used it in the store for a while as an advertisement. But then I gave it to the Historical Society because we couldn't display it in our house because we couldn't big umbrella like that.
This is an ad, I'm not sure that it's dated. Oh, yes, it is. The Cortland Standard, August 11th, 1896. 5 gold dollars, 5 silver dollars, or 5 paper dollars could be used, which I thought was interesting that all those different currencies were out there at that time. And this is a picture of 1898 called The Boys, but it was the staff in the store. But that picture and this picture from 1958, just how much staff was available to help customers at that time.
In 1958, there were half a dozen men's clothing stores in Cortland. Is there any explanation as to how there can be none now?
Well, and there's no women's clothing stores. There's Bev's up at Homer. It's just 1958.
I have my theory on it, I don't know. After World War II, when Eisenhower was building all these super highways throughout the country, when 81 came down through from Syracuse to Binghamton, you see, we used to draw from Cincinnatus and all county, but then people could be in Syracuse in a half an hour or wherever they wanted to go. And that was, I think, the death knell of a lot of the businesses in Cortland. I mean, the retail businesses in
And
Cortland.
small towns everywhere with
And malls started rising and things like that.
Going one at a time.
yeah.
Now Amazon's going to take over everything.
Could be. Luckily, I'm not around, I won't be around for all of that.
There are apparently enough farms to need clothes out of Burgess.
Someone had told me that there was more than one store with downstairs selling space than your store. Were there other stores that had that common walkway under the sidewalk?
I don't know, there might have been other stores that had a downstairs selling area, but it was the only one I knew that went under the sidewalk.
I think when I came, didn't Newberry's have a downstairs?
Yeah.
I think it did.
And I don't think it went, I don't think it went under the sidewalk, but it went
They
downstairs.
did have that.
Yeah, there were a lot of.
Yes, Woolsey's did, you're right. Right, yeah.
Penny's had a downstairs.
Penny's was
Yeah, well, they had, I know Penny's had it downstairs, and I think Wilson's
Woolsey's had a
Wilson's and
downstairs.
Salter's had a common store.
I beg your pardon?
Wilsey's and Salve's had a common store.
Yeah, they had through the back of Wilsey's and the side of Sarvay's, there was a common door that you could go from one to the other.
Big thing.
Yeah, big on the road.
Okay, so if there's nothing else, if anyone would like to come and look at the pictures, you're more than welcome to.
Thank you.